This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anybody else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast, and subscribe. Well, we've got a fun show for you today. We have a gentleman here who can relate to us old dogs. He has been doing real estate investing for quite a while, and I'm talking about Lou Brown. He's not only a teacher, he's a doer. When he was faced with the most recent real estate market crash and nothing was selling, he bought. In the span of a year, he bought and sold over 50 properties. He invented unique techniques to get his properties sold so he wouldn't be sitting with them. What Lou believes and teaches is what we teach here at the Old Dogs REI Network. Cash flow is king. It is the driving force of a successful family and business. He has been quoted as an expert by such publications as the Wall Street Journal and Smart Money magazine, and Lou draws from his extensive background as a real estate investor, having bought properties since his first one in 1977 when he was only 19 years old. He has invested in single-family homes, apartments, hotels, and developed subdivisions, as well as building and renovating homes and apartments. He is well known for his creative financing and deal structuring concepts and enjoys sharing his discoveries with others as he teaches seminars, writes courses, books, and audio training on how to make money and keep it. He was the founding president of the National Real Estate Investors Association and is past president and lifetime member of the Georgia Real Estate Investors Association. He firmly believes that the path of success is through ongoing education, and he continues to invest thousands of dollars annually in his own education. Well, Lou, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate the opportunity. And wow, it's just exciting to find out that you exist. I didn't know. And I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm an old dog. I ought to be on this thing. I ought to be listening to this.
Old dogs tend to travel in packs, so this is good.
Yeah, baby. That's good stuff.
Well, I'm really excited to have you on. This is great because you speak from our standpoint here, and we have a lot of different questions we're going to be asking during the course of this. But I thought it'd be good just I kind of gave an overview of your background, but I'd really like to kind of get a little bit of your history here. I mean, you started at 19 years of age. I'd like to know how and why you got involved in real estate and how you came up to the present.
Bill, it's a great story. I got started on the wrong side of the tracks, as they say. I was raised by my mom, single mom. She had come over on the Queen Mary, in fact. That might relate to some
No
people on this
way.
call.
Wow.
She came over on the Queen Mary as a war bride. And she had met the love of her life, her American trooper husband. Everything was going to be fantastic. She left her whole family behind, came to this country, found out he was an alcoholic and an abuser. And she realized that she was strong enough to be able to get out of that relationship. Then she was here by herself. And I jokingly say, and then she met my father, her second mistake.
Okay.
so so then it just ended up being the two of us. I didn't even see my father until from really 3 years of age on, and it just ended up being the two of us. So it was really an interesting experience, and it was one of those places in life where if you're not challenged, things don't happen. And so I was challenged to be a kind of a father and a brother and a cousin and an uncle and aunt and everything else to my mother. And we kind of raised each other. It was a really remarkable experience because we didn't have any money. And she was struggling all the time. And really, money to her was something to be spent. And if you didn't have it, you spent it anyway. And she would get tied up with all kinds of these loan sharks and paying 22% interest. And I would just see what was happening and the fact that we were always struggling and it was not comfortable. And so it was really an experience where I said, if it is to be, it is up to me. You know, you asked me about a favorite quote, and that's a favorite quote of mine is, if it is to be, it is up to me. I had to, really come from that place of nothing and nobody to rely on. I had no brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandparents, nobody. It was just the two of us. And so the good fortune that I had was meeting my mom's friends, and I called them aunts and uncles since I didn't have any. And so I tell the story about Aunt Mabel and Uncle George because Mabel had bought a duplex that she lived in. I was 8 years old. I'll never forget this story. 8 years old, and she tells me that she bought the duplex they live in. And of course, I'm thinking in like an 8-year-old, and I'm going, man, that's great. And she tells me this extra part of that story. She said the people on the other side are paying enough money to cover the mortgage. They're paying enough money in rent to cover the mortgage. And I'm thinking to myself, she's not having to pay to live here, and we're hiding out from the rent man. My mother would say, don't answer the door, because she really didn't want to face them to tell them that she would have the money on Friday, right? So she always paid the rent. She always found a way to pay the rent, but it was always a struggle. And she didn't even want to face people when she didn't have the money. So I found out what it's like to not have any money and to found out what a struggle that can be. And so then I kind of woke up to how life is, that I call them parallel universes, but basically there's the people with knowledge of how to make money and how to keep money, and there's people without that knowledge because they don't have the education or the exposure to the opportunity. And so basically I woke up, and then Aunt Mabel, a year later, she's buying the duplex next door, and she said the people on one side are paying enough to cover the mortgage and the other money was theirs. And I started paying attention to their lifestyle, and they went out to eat every night. Aunt Mabel didn't like to cook, so they let other people cook for them at the restaurants. And it was just an incredible experience to watch how they grew and were able to buy another duplex and another, all on the same street. Talk about target marketing, right?
Wow.
They were doing it all on the same street. And as a result of what they did, I got to watch their life and their experiences change and they improve, and bought a brand new car every other year, brand new Cadillac. That was the luxury car back in the day, right?
Of course.
And you didn't import cars from other countries. It was all done here, and we had our own luxury cars, and people just had a great life. They traveled, they went on cruises, and they had just just a completely different life than mine. And I'm so very fortunate to have met her and just heard from her. Now she was one of those type of people that you look at and you say that person is just not the type of person I would be drawn to give me life advice. But yet she was such a mentor for me. She was about 4 foot tall, 4 foot wide, and she spoke with a speech impediment. And she talked like this. So, I mean, he talked like that. You had to listen because if you didn't listen, you didn't understand what he was saying. And not making fun of her, but just to show you that there's so many different mentors in our life, and if we pay attention, we can get great information. And sure enough, she says to me, and she smoked and she drank scotch, and she's just not the type of person you would expect that would really give you life advice that would make such a difference. But it did. And she said to me at 18 years old, she says, "You need to buy a house." And I said, "Man," I said, "you go to banks and qualify for loans, Aunt Mabel." I said, I've never been to a bank. I wouldn't be able to qualify for anything." She said, "You need to meet my friend, Realtor Sue." And sure enough, Realtor Sue comes along and she's going to sell me a house. I'm 18. She's going to sell me a house. And sure enough, we went driving around looking at properties, and she told me about a thing called NENQ loans. That was non-escalating, meaning the interest rate didn't increase. Non-qualifying, meaning I didn't have to qualify for the loan. And I could just take over for $45. I could take over an existing loan. And I said, "That sounds like a plan to me." And so sure enough, right before my 19th birthday, I put a property under contract, have my birthday, close right after my birthday. And that was the first property I ever bought.
Now, did you have a job at this time?
It's interesting. I went to college for 1 year. I won a scholarship with Junior Achievement and went to Central Piedmont Community College in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I thought that was an interesting experience. But being kind of an anxious young man, I really couldn't see how that was going to get me there. And that it was going to take a lot of time, and maybe I should investigate some other things. So sure enough, I became a sales representative for at the time I was working for the American Red Cross, and I left that job and became a sales representative and for business forms. And I learned how to be a 1099, 100% contractor, basically, and make my own way in life. And I said, "Hey, if this doesn't work out, Mom, I will go back to college. But for now, I'm going to try this out." And that's where it ended. So basically, I got a whole year of community college and went on to be in business. And then ultimately, in 1983, I went full-time in real estate, never looked back, and just continued to buy properties ever since then.
Now, with that first house, I mean, you lived in it, or did you rent part of it out?
I did. It was my first property, and I invited my mother to be my first tenant.
That's going to be tough on collections.
Well, actually, I told her to keep the money. I said, "Listen, we're paying $600 a month rent." I said, "If you could pay me $100 a month to help me cover the utilities and cook some meals and wash some clothes," that was part of the deal. I said, "You take the other $500 and put it towards all this debt that you have," because I really wanted to see that disappear in her life. I really hated the 22% interest. I really hated all of the stuff that unfortunately she had committed to. And so I said, "Just get rid of this debt." And sure enough, a year and a half later, she was free and clear for the rest of her life. And that was the least I could do for all the sacrifices that she did for me. There's no doubt about it. And so I gave a little bit there and gave her an opportunity. And then the company I was with transferred me from Charlotte to Atlanta, gave me a a new territory and offered me, they bribed me. In fact, they said, we'll pay the closing cost. If you sell your house, we'll pay the closing costs and we'll move you to Atlanta. And then when you buy a house in Atlanta, we'll pay the closing costs on that. And sure enough, that's what I did. And within 2 years of having bought that house, I sold it, made a 37% profit. And I said, man, that is pretty cool. Then I went to Atlanta and I told the real estate agent, I want to do exactly what I did in Charlotte. I want to get one of the NENQ loans. And she did. She went and found me a house like that. And I took some of my proceeds from the sale of the one house, put them into the new house, and kind of started my parlay of real estate from there. Unfortunately, though, in 1982, Congress, being the bought souls that they are, passed a law called the Garn-St. Germain Federal Depository Institutions Act, and the banks bought the Congress people to put a loan or to put a new bill into effect where basically there was no longer the NENQ loan, and now there was the due upon sale clause in the mortgage. And so that kind of changed my trajectory of being able to find and buy those NENQ loans. But I found out by actually reading the law that there was an exception in there. And that is when you place your property in trust, essentially for estate planning purposes, then the lender is prohibited from calling the loan due. So in other words, they don't consider it to be a sale. So I said, I really need to study this thing called the trusts. And I became an expert in that and started using them in really back then, 1984, I think 83 or 84, I did my first trust and have fallen head over heels in love with the entity called trusts and found that it is so profoundly better and different than LLCs, corporations, limited partnerships that I studied. I became an expert in it in all 50 states and learned that this is something that everybody should know about, everybody should use in their life. And so I began buying my properties in trust. I began taking over people's existing financing by helping them place their property in trust for estate planning purposes, and then purchasing the beneficial interest of that trust and continuing to make payments, just like I did when I was doing NENQ loans. So fast forward today, over 40 years in the business of buying, holding, and selling property, I've never been to the bank and I've never qualified for a loan. So that's kind of tying that back to Aunt Mabel. She went to banks and qualified for loans, and my parallel universe was that I've never been to the bank and I've never qualified for a loan because I found out that there was another way to do this.
You're generally, I would think, looking for people that don't necessarily qualify for traditional loans, but they want a home and maybe they have a good income, but you can't list it on the MLS, right? I mean, how do you market and sort of target that group of people?
Well, you can list it on the MLS, but you're giving up a big portion of your profits. So I realized, because of the fact that I've been in the business for so long, I've been in many different real estate cycles. And anybody who's been around like us old dogs, we one of the things we know is that real estate is cyclical. Well, the reason it's cyclical is because of generations. As generations come and grow, and then they kind of get what they need in terms of housing, and then there's a lull period, and then it comes back. And of course, there's factors, the economy, the manipulation of the economy, the manipulation of the stock market. Those are all real things. Then what we need to do is really realize where our safety net is. And I discovered in 2009, because 2008, I had 10 properties. I bought them right. I bought them cheap. I fixed them up beautifully, granite, everything, just gorgeous houses. People wanted them. They raised their hand. They said, I want it, I want it, I want it. And the contracts kept falling through because the financing wasn't there. And I said, aha, And then I thought back in my career and I said, you know, you've never had problem buying properties, but when you really look at it, all your issues have come when you try to sell the properties. You know, there's some delay in the financing, there's some upset, some breakdown, somebody changes their job, they lose their job. There's other things, there's hurricanes, there's people breaking into the property, stealing stuff, on and on. And I said, you know, what if I change my business? What if I go find my buyers first? So that was a huge aha moment for me. It was a shift in my thinking. It was a shift in my business. It was a shift in my focus. And I said, really, I've got to go in a different place and really give people an opportunity that they otherwise would not have. And sure enough, when I did that, everything shifted. So I went and found my buyers. And then I put together a whole marketing campaign where all I was going to do is find buyers. And then when I found those folks, I was going to discover exactly how much down payment they have, how much they could afford on a monthly basis. And actually, then I could go resource a property for them. So in 2009, that's what I started doing. And I created a whole system of marketing just to find buyers or just to find renters that wanted home ownership. And then what evolved is our program called the Path to Home Ownership. And then what evolved from that is our certification program, where we become certified affordable housing providers, not just real estate investors, but affordable housing providers. That help people to end up with home ownership regardless of credit or financial background. And I found that that really made a big difference in, first of all, they're listening for us. Secondly, that there's a huge, huge audience of folks out there that are looking for this and that love the opportunity to get on board and actually have some support while you're looking for a house for them.
Do you have to have a realtor's license to do this?
Not at all. When you're a principal in the transaction, you're actually purchasing the property. So, and of course, you're going to purchase it in trust, like I was saying before. But basically, in the eyes of the buyer, of the renter, you're a manager. And in fact, that's legitimately true because the property's owned by the trust and you are hired by the trust to manage it. So your job is to go find these folks and to find properties to be able to purchase to put these people into.
Now, what percentage of the folks actually end up buying the house? Is there a lower percentage because of this arrangement, or is it a fairly high percentage?
Well, Billy, back in the day, it was a very low percentage. And in fact, when I hit upon the concept of leasing with the option to buy, it used to be back in the day, it was just builders that did it for maybe 6 months to get you through the winter. They would get their properties filled with somebody until they could get to the selling season over in the spring and the summer. So they would maybe give a 6-month option. Well, I took that concept and said, what if we were to give a multi-year option to people and really give them time to get their credit cleaned up and set them up for success, not failure? And so sure enough, I shifted into a 3-year option concept where we would give people credit every month that they paid on time. They would earn credit towards their down payment. Now, to answer your question, back in the day, we didn't used to take people by the hand and support them through getting improved credit and actually gearing them up to home ownership. And as things evolved, I realized that if I didn't take them by the hand, then the success rate was very low, only about 10%. But then when we started working with people and started inspiring them into their future and started showing them what was possible, then everybody's world shifted. And now we have multiple people per year that end up with home ownership because we've actually supported them through the process. We put them into a credit restoration program provided by a nonprofit organization. They have the lowest cost in the industry. And one of the cool things is we get paid. We get paid to put them into the credit restoration. We get paid to help them lower their costs on utilities, for example, on their cell phones and on their utilities such as gas and electric and security monitoring and all these different things. We get paid when we, basically help people to get those different services that they would have spent money on anyway. So we've created a number of what we call additional income or profit centers that we provide as services to our clients, and that provides additional income to us on a monthly basis. I'm a big believer in residual income, big believer in setting yourself up to not only get paid today, but get paid forever with what you're doing, and you're helping people too.
That's awesome. And what happens after 3 years, though, if they don't meet the qualifications at that point?
Well, our biggest thing is vacancy is your biggest expense in this business. So we don't want vacancy. So we'll encourage people to buy another year by modifying their option and by, giving them another length of time if necessary. But generally speaking, people within 1 or 2 years, if they're going to perform or not, and by their behavior and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so we just help them and encourage them through the process. But we've got 4 levels of our program, so those are not the only folks we work with. We also work with people that have significant down payments, business owners, for example, that come in, but they can't qualify for a loan at the bank, but they can certainly qualify for our loan. And so we'll work with those folks and give them an opportunity that the bank won't give them.
That's great. But, just kind of looking at this, it seems like, especially with all the various options that you're working with and credit coaching and these other areas, it seems very labor intensive, maybe even more so than just being a rental landlord, for example.
Well, a rental landlord, let's think about that for a minute. What's your profit there? It's the difference between what you're paying in your cost of funds, your loan, and what you've got the property rented for. So that may be, in some cases, it's break even. I've noticed some people investing in real estate, not even making any money, which I do not subscribe to that program.
Yeah, good.
I'm not a believer in that program. But I really see that the profit margins can be quite thin, particularly when a water heater goes out or a roof is needed or something like that. It can wipe out your profit for the next year or two on a property. So no, that's not what we do. We look at all these additional profit centers, and people can elect whether they use those profit centers or not. And it really just boosts the amount of property you get or income you get. Let's take it as an example, a rental. Let's say your cost of funds is $800 a month and your income is $1,000 a month. Well, that's great, but that's not the whole story. And you say, well, yeah, but I'm getting depreciation write-offs, so I'm able to decrease the amount that I have to pay for income taxes. Well, that's great too. And oh, by the way, every month that you're making a payment towards the loan, you're paying down that loan. That's great too. But there's this other whole world out there, and in our world we call it the path to home ownership. But our clients, when they move in, they're giving us thousands of dollars to move into our property. So not only am I making that differential between what my cost of funds is and what the amount of payment, we call it the housing payment that they're making every month, we're also making the money that they pay to move into the property. We're also making additional income. And sometimes when we're financing for those folks, now we don't even have the typical cost that a landlord would have. Water heater goes out. Do you call your mortgage company? No. You deal with the water heater. If the roof leaks, do you call the mortgage company? No. You deal with your roof leak. So when you talk about the weight being heavier or having more stuff to do, It's actually the reverse when you get to the level of what we call our gold membership. So we have a bronze, silver, gold, and platinum level in our path to home ownership. And at the gold level, that means they've paid us at least 10% of the value of the property. So we've got money in hand. So think about that differential between your cost of funds and what you're receiving in a monthly payment. Plus, I've got a whole hunk of money that I've received from the people. Plus, I've transferred over all the typical stuff that a landlord has to deal with. The toilet gets stopped up, not my problem. So it's a whole different way of looking at your real estate business, but I find it to be extremely more valuable than a traditional landlord scenario.
Well, this is fantastic. There's definitely I could see some advantages to that. Do you ever? Other those points where you're going to have to take a home back and and evict, or if they're not paying, I don't know how you would do that. I guess it'd be like a foreclosure, or how would you handle that?
Well, that's a great question. And we provide our clients with something we call the agreement for deed. So they don't actually get the deed to the property, they get an agreement to get the deed when they pay us off. And in the meantime, they're paying us a payment that's equivalent to principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, just like a traditional mortgage. So what happens is that if they default, then we declare the default. We give them an opportunity. We're always looking to keep them in the property if we possibly can. But if we can't, we're going to try to do a workout with them, sometimes even paying them to move to get out of the property. Otherwise, and yes, there is a backup plan. If it doesn't work out, then we can go through with a traditional foreclosure process to get the property back. But I will tell you, Bill, it is very rare that we have to do that. In my career, I've only had to do it a couple of times. So it's not a big part of the business. It's not something that I pay a lot of attention to. We're more geared towards finding the right folks, having them pay us a significant down payment, so that if we did have to go through that pain and suffering, we would be able to already have funds that we could fall back on because of the fact that they did put some skin in the game.
So your goal within that 3-year period is to help them to restore their credit, to get to the point where they can actually finance the property themselves, which means they pay you off, right? And then they take on a traditional mortgage?
That's correct. So it's really up to them. And by the way, it's up to you. So if you think about this, let's say that your real ultimate strategy was just to receive income, and maybe you've got retirement funds or you've got personal funds and you just want to deploy those. What could be better than just being the bank for these nice people? First of all, they've moved in, they gave you money to move in, they've paid you every month, they've paid you on time, so you've decided that they've met your credit qualifications. And now they've actually played the game. They've improved their credit to the point that they can qualify for a loan. Well, why not just be the bank for them? If you don't have a better place to take that profit and put it into more real estate, why not just lower your interest rate and just to what they would pay a bank and just be the bank from now on?
Would you set up like a 20 or 30-year loan?
Well, our initial financing with our folks is 40-year financing.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds, oh my gosh, who does 40 years? Let me tell you something. The banks have 50-year loans now. People are living longer. Have you heard?
Yeah, I'm one of them. No.
Exactly. So the banks are onto that game, and instead of giving 30-year loans, which is about the time that you would expire in the old days, shortly after you pay off your loan, you'd actually expire. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. So people are lasting a lot longer. They invented these things called replaceable parts and moving hearts and arteries from pigs and all these kind of things. You're just amazing what happens. And so what happens is that the lender becomes you, and you can do 40-year financing. And I do 10.99%. We get 10% down. We receive 3 points from our buyer. We roll that into the loan. We finance it for 40 years. When you do the math on that, it's a whole lot better than a landlord game.
Wow.
I can give you an example of a $100,000 property where you got $10,000 down, and you add 3 points back to that. Well, you're going to earn over $500,000 on that little transaction over a 40-year span.
Yeah, that's what the mortgage companies do. That's it. Yeah, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
We're
Wow.
back to those tall buildings and marble floors and
Seriously.
drive-through windows.
Oh, man.
Welcome to my world, Bill.
This is a great I mean, actually a great little business that you've put together. Probably not so little, but I mean it's a great it's I mean, from ground up. I mean, thinking how you started this from a 19-year-old kid to today. I mean, you must have encountered a lot of different things. I mean, I mean, it sounds like you really had a good dose of the school of hard knocks, And what would you say is sort of your biggest mistake in your real estate investing career so far that people could really learn from, something that they could avoid at any cost?
Doing stupid stuff that I don't know what to do.
Get a little more specific here.
Well, sometimes in life, you get presented things and you say, "Oh, that would be an adventure. That sounds like fun." And you really have no background, no experience in that. And, so I've done several things. I bought a ranch one time. That was interesting at the height of the market. And, of course, land is land. It just holds the earth together. And they say, they're not making any money, any more of that. Well, they don't need to. There's plenty of it. There's plenty of it out there. And, you kind of look at things and it looks like a deal that day. But when you get deeper into it, you find out it's not such a deal. So, there's places that we sometimes get entertained. Certainly development is another one. If you're not a developer, in other words, that's what you do, you take a piece of land and you develop it and you make it into lots, and then you get out of the way. You let the builders build and you move on down the road to your next development. You see, that's what a developer does. But real estate investor who wants to be entertained says, I'm going to be a developer today. And so you find out all the pain and suffering that goes with developing, which, let me tell you guys, this is no joke. This is a serious matter. And the people that have the power is the county folks that approve your plans or don't approve your plans, as the case may be. And you thought you had 25 lots, and by the time they're done with you, you have 20 lots. And if your last 5 lots were your profit, guess what? You're not going to make any profit. And so that's just an example of foolishness that people can get into when you compare it to a building that's standing there that you can evaluate. You can value it right now today. You can know exactly what to do with it and how to do it. And then you realize, oh my gosh, it makes so much more sense. It might be boring, but I can take it today. I can put a customer into it. The customer will take it as is. They'll do all the repairs. I'll give them credit towards their down payment for doing some of the repairs or all of the repairs. And I'll receive a payment from them at move-in, and then I'll receive a payment every month after that. Gee, isn't that smarter than developing? The answer is yes, it is.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you answered 2 of my questions right there. You went from biggest mistake, which I'd throw into the category of shiny object syndrome, right? Where there's all these things you want to try out and do, and then the biggest success. And it really sounds like the rent to purchase lease option, whatever you want to call that aspect of it, that really for you it sounds like you've just worked it out to a science.
Well, Bill, there's one more aspect to it, and one that it took me some years and some age to evolve to this, but it is the service the heart side of things, the gift side of things, the making a difference side of things, the significance side of things, the dynasty side of things, where you step back and you look at your life and you say, what did I do to make things better around here? Who am I being in the matter? Am I just here to make some money? And who am I making that money for? And what am I doing this for? And what if I can make a difference in someone else's life too? And then I realized that there's this whole huge underserved group of folks that are just wonderful folks on the planet, making a difference, getting up and going to work every day and just doing stuff and making my life better, certainly for serving me, for making whatever food that's on my table, planting the fields, whatever it might be. And if I could be of service by giving them a place to live and then being the bank for them, am I making a difference in someone else's life? And I realized, oh my gosh, the impact that we're making on other people's lives is just profound. And it's not just about the money. And then that's why I stepped away, or part of the reason I stepped away from landlording, because I said landlording is really assigning yourself a torture chamber, because landlording is no fun in terms of the typical mindset that you're dealing with on landlording, and then the pain and suffering that you go through when somebody gives you back your property all trashed. And I said, what if I just started attracting people that wanted to have a better life themselves? And then I started serving those folks, and I love the people that we deal with now. And I love giving them great opportunities to change their lives. And does it work out all the time? No, it doesn't. But life doesn't work out all the time all the time either, right? There's different lessons that we're here to learn. And God sent us here and says, okay, you got to figure out another part of this angle for yourself. And you're going to be put through some tests and trials and tribulations, and you're going to have to take something away from that, or you're going to have to come back and deal with it again. And so I said, if we can step back from what we're doing and just say, how am I making a difference? And can I make a difference? And can I make a difference for the better? And end up with a really great retirement for myself and my family, and just do something that's good out there in the world.
I love that. I think that's I think something that's missed a lot in business in general, but real estate investing as well, where people are just looking at the profit and not looking at the fact that they could be changing a community, they could be impacting a person's life for the rest of their life. That's huge.
It's so fun, when you really step back and look at it. I've watched it happen too, because as a real estate investor myself, I've bought from burned out landlords. I've bought whole packages of properties from burned out landlords. And I said, if you think about it, it's kind of a little slavery thing, that you've gotten yourself into this never ending little hamster wheel, and you're having to run around because you're constantly getting properties back. People are, not paying you, whatever the case may be. And I said, I just want a different class of people that pay me. I want a different mindset of people that pay me. And so I started attracting those folks. And now I plant people all over the country that are doing the same thing that I'm doing. So I just teach people how to duplicate exactly what I do in, the Tucker, Georgia area. Now I'm planting people all over the country that are duplicating my company, and they become certified affordable housing providers. And then they attract people locally that want a better life. They want the path to home ownership. And so I provide to them all the marketing materials and everything to be able to attract those folks and give them that opportunity. And the payday is huge.
That's great. Well, our audience is, 50 plusers. Some of people are approaching retirement. Some of them are already in retirement. They're looking for cash flow. I mean, that's really where they're at, passively as they can. They don't want a new job necessarily. Some do. Some want some stuff to do in their retirement. And then you have those that, want it to be as passive as they can because they've worked a career, and they're ready to enjoy grandkids and family and so forth. And so, what advice would you have for those folks to get that cash flow, but not necessarily create a new job?
Bill, that's a great question. I am thoughtful about this one couple that came to me. It's such a great story. They were 65 years old. They told me, when I first met them, hey, Lou, we are retirees from IBM, 29 years with the company. And we, have had a great life. We've raised our kids. Everything's great. But we got to this point in our life that even with our retirement income from IBM, we don't feel secure. We feel that we're not there yet. And said, Lou, what would you do with us? I said, it's Ken and Susan Carden from Dallas, Texas. And I said, just get on board and stay on board. And sure enough, 2 years later, Ken comes to me and he says, okay, Lou, we're done. I said, done with what? He said, well, really, we don't want any more properties. We're kind of there. And I said, well, what does there mean? He says, well, we got 15 cash flowing properties right now. And he says, we don't want any more because we don't want to deal with the landlording and what have you. I said, well, Ken, why don't we take the folks that live there and convert them to owners? And so he said, okay, how does that work? And I laid it all out. And I said, let's make you a certified affordable housing provider. Let's go back to the tenants that you have and convert them to owners. Well, sure enough, 5 of the people actually, with a little bit of work, were able to get their credit good enough to get loans from banks. And so we took that profit from those 5 properties and paid off the other 10 properties, then gave the other 10 tenants the opportunity at home ownership simply by converting them from renters to owners and making monthly payments. And so Ken and Susan's cash flow went to $10,000 a month and no headaches of landlording, no headaches of management, because all they have to do is just every month collect those mortgage payments just like the bank does.
Wow, that's a great story, man. Oh man, thinking of so many people that I talk to that fall into that category that are just looking for that, but don't necessarily want the landlording aspect of it. Wow.
Well, I don't think they want the risk of the stock market either. There's places you can store your money, but hey, what does that mean? And what stock? It's always a fascinating thing. They say the stock market's going up, and people say, except for my stock, what's going on? The stock market may be going up, but my stock is not. And I kind of found that to be true myself when I was doing the stock market. I've been out of the stock market for, oh my gosh, decades. And I just didn't find it a place that was that favorable to me. And because I didn't have any control over it, I didn't have any control over these nice people that were running the place. And so I didn't know what kind of decisions they might make that could affect my future. And I decided that if I could touch it, if I could feel it, if I could value it, and if I could put my own customer in there, and I could control that payment and I could control that asset, I'd be in a fine position. And so that's paid all these years ever since then. And I'm really thankful that God showed me that path, because it is a great path. And I can't find anything that makes more sense to the average person, that, you can just do it and there's a path to take and there's the right paperwork and there's, it's a proven formula. Then I don't have to go and figure these things out, over and over again. I can just keep cookie cuttering the same thing over and over.
Wow. Well, Lou, this has been such a great interview. I hate to wrap it up. We have our portion of the program called Wrap It Up, where I ask you a series of quick questions so you can share resources that have been valuable for you. And if you are ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Sure.
All right. First question, favorite real estate book?
My first real estate book is still my favorite. It's How to Wake Up the Financial Genius Inside You by Mark O. Harrelson. It's out of date, out of print. but it was yet some great information that I got early in my career that sparked me, in addition to Aunt Mabel's prodding, to just take the step of going ahead and getting a rental property over and above my own personal residence. And so that sparked me, and it's still my favorite.
I love it. That's great. How about favorite just general business book?
General business, actually, there's a great one for those that want to really build a business, and it's Traction by Gino Wickman.
Love that book.
Yeah,
love
baby.
That book. Really good book. Yeah. Excellent. How about most valuable website for success, of course, other than your own?
landmarkeducation.org, I think it is, or .com. Landmark gave me some valuable things. They have a 3-day training called The Forum, and it opens up some technology in your mind that you didn't know was there, and some ways of being, some kind of exposures to your way of being that you don't see for yourself because of your own blind sides, but certainly going through the little technology that they do in that 3-day training wakes you up. So I would say that would be a valuable website for a lot of people.
Okay. And how about favorite app on your phone?
That one's going to surprise you, is Notes. my favorite app that I use only all the time is Notes. And I just click on that thing, and I found out, people have all these sophisticated files and steps, and they have all these deep dives into their notes. And I just found out they've got this little search engine at the top, and I don't have to put anything in a file. I can just search for either the title or something in that particular note that I know is there, and boom, here it comes.
That's a good idea.
I love it.
How about the favorite quote?
If it is to be, it is up to me. And also Winston Churchill's quote on never, 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 never give up.
I love that one. Great. And then this one here, and since you have been in many aspects of real estate investing, I'm really dying to hear your answer to this. But this is, if you had to start all over and knowing what you know, let's say you lost everything, and all you have in your hands here is just the clothes you're wearing and $1,000 in cash, okay? What would you do with that $1,000 to relaunch your real estate investing business?
Well, that's a great question. I would go to a neighborhood. I would park my car, or if I was walking, maybe I don't even have a car.
Okay, we'll give you a car.
In your scenario.
But it's a junker. No, okay.
Or I thumbed my way to a neighborhood that I like, and that I would like to own property in, and I would literally start knocking on doors. And I would knock on doors, and I would say something to the effect, I would love to own a home in this neighborhood. Do you know of any for sale? And I have found that to be remarkably productive in my career. I've taught it for years, and it's amazing. Anybody can start this business at ground zero, literally financially ground zero, and be able to make a success of it if you'll just apply yourself. And so money is not it. I mean, I have shown so many people how to I call them $10 houses. And, that's another topic for another day. But, literally we can buy properties by taking over existing financing, making a profit on it, giving the seller what they need.
That's great. That's great. Wow. Well, this has been amazing here. I know there's a lot of folks that are listening that would like to find out more about you and what you do and some of these amazing educational resources you have. What's the best way for folks to reach you?
1-800-578-8580. More than happy to talk with anyone. Let them know when my upcoming next event is. MillionaireJumpstart.com is where you can find out about any upcoming Jumpstart events, which is a 3-day training. And it would give you some insight into everything we've talked about here, except spread out with a lot more detail and forms and things like that. streetsmartinvestor.com is my website, and I would love to give people a copy of my Amazon.com bestseller. It's called Doing Good While Doing Well. And so if you want a free version of that, or you can go to get a Kindle version if you want to get that 99 cents on the Amazon.com. But also, if you want to hold the book in your hand, we'll ship it to you. It's getdoinggoodbook.com. Getdoinggoodbook.com. You can register there and either get a digital download, or we will ship you the book. And that's some information. Also, my YouTube channel. Love people. It's streetsmartinvestor.com/LouTube, LOUTUBE.
I like it. Go to LouTube. I like it. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. It's a good thing.
Oh, that's great. That is so great. Wow. Well, we have a tradition here on the Old Dogs Network, and we are called the Old Dogs REI Network. So, Lou, this is your chance right now to give us your best old hound dog howl. Now, you're in Georgia down there. I know there's hound dogs. I know you know what a good hound dog howl sounds like. So we're going to turn this over to you, and we'll close it out.
Ow!
All right, I love it. That was very good. That was definitely an experienced howl. That was good.
Yeah, howl at the moon. That's another place I like to go to.
Yeah, really.
That's a yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. Well, thank you so much, Lou, for being on the show today.
Well, Bill, it's been a thrill. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. I love to give people some insights into the possibilities of a great future, and I love the opportunity. So thank you for allowing me to expose myself to your audience, for sure.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thanks, Lou. And I also want to thank all our Old Dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Now, please note everything presented here today, including some of these links that Lou mentioned, the link for the book. I mean, all this great resource information that he provided can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And you're going to look for the episode with Lou Brown. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.